Let's start off with the introduction. So we have two amazing panelists and a very, very interesting topic for today. Yuval Yosefi, Media Department Lead at Playtika. Yuval, welcome, and please do explain, what do you do at Playtika?
Hi, everyone. So I've been in Playtika for over 4 years now. I've been doing performance marketing and monetization roles. Currently, I'm leading the UA Media Department, which is basically every user acquisition that's not social or search. And I've been leading the cross-promotion project and team here in Playtika for the past 2 years.
Awesome. So a lot of knowledge on both sides of acquisition and cross promotion. And Igor Bereslavski, welcome as well, Director of Growth at Supersonic. And you haven't been at Supersonic for a long time because Supersonic hasn't been here for a long time, but for a good time. So Igor, can you please tell about your past and what is growth at Supersonic other than rapid increase of DAU?
Yeah, thank you, Mishka. So I'm with Iron Source almost 5 years. As you mentioned, we started Supersonic in the beginning of 2020, and we grew to be one of the biggest publishers in the world at the moment. We are an Iron Source publisher solution for developers. We're working with hundreds of developers, and we have now already 32 games live at the store. So it's a nice amount in 18 months. What is growth? So growth is everything about your monetization, which is the loop of the revenue for hyper casual, and the creative side as well. So we have a dedicated creative studio in Supersonic that produce creative for our games.
Awesome. So the two companies combined have a tremendous amount of DAU and very, very different type of games. So let's kick off this meeting or this webinar by talking about what do you mean by cross promotion, and most importantly for everybody here, why does cross promotion matter? So Igor, let's start with you.
Yeah. So cross promotion is basically you want to grow if you have more than one app, okay? So you want to grow your apps and keep your users in your portfolio. And you don't want, we understand that players play simultaneously more than one game at each time, yeah? And, basically, you want to try that your user's next game you will be yours game, not your competitors. So this is, I think, what cross promo is about, to keep your players in your portfolio, in the ecosystem, and to grow your DAO by that.
So Yuval, would you agree with this definition, and would you add something to it?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, we know our players better than anyone, and we all compete for the same apps, for the same audience, right? So you might as well get it from in-house, the way that, you would recommend the right game to the right user based on what you know about them, and keep them within your portfolio and eventually increase the DAO and the overall lifetime value.
All right, and I'll just add it from the product perspective. The way I've seen cross promotion effect is it allows me to bid a little bit higher because I can have the portfolio effect. So I can pay a little bit more for a player because most likely some of those players can be transferred to other games, and through that I can get a little bit more players or a little bit more valuable players. So that was the product perspective, as looking at the graphs, the one graph that shows this game and the other graph that is above it always, and that's the portfolio value of those players. So that's kind of like my conception to it. Anyways, let's talk about something that is the misconception when it comes to cross promotion, because oftentimes it's not as easy, even though it's simple to explain on, or whether you're using sheets or graphs or just like this talking about the cross promotion makes all the sense. But then when you're actually trying to make cross promotion happen, there's a lot of misconceptions and a lot of pushback from different game teams and different game studios. So can we start talking about what kind of misconceptions do you face when you're working with your portfolio? So Yuval, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I've encountered quite often is the expectations for players to behave too differently when crossing from one app to another. For example, expecting that a non-paying user with a high seniority will cross and then become a heavy payer in the other app. From what we've seen, players' habit is usually consistent. So it's important to set the right expectations and goals.
Mm-hmm. How about Igor?
So I see a lot of misconceptions in the cross promo. I'm talking mainly about ad revenue based games and hyper casual. So the first is I think that is to maintain the right balance between the cross promo and the other ad revenue that you generate. So we see that if you're doing it in the right way, so it doesn't matter if you feel 10% of your you buy like 10% of your users through cross promo, 90% of the users through cross promo, you still can be very profitable and hit your targets. It's all about how you do it, and if you build the right, if you set the right CPI, if you set the right margins, if you're using the right tools. So for hyper casual, I think it's a must to do a cross promo, especially for big publishers that hold a lot of inventory. If you are not doing it, or if you're capping yourself, so basically, in other words, you give the opportunity for your competitors to compete on your users that can ship instead of your game. They will probably ship to other games, and then you might lose them. So as bottom line, I think that if you're able to do 100% cross promo in hyper casual, you're profitable. That's great.
So Igor, in your case, as a hyper casual publisher, you have pretty much a full control of the games in your portfolio. Would that be a correct assumption?
It's not 100% of control. It's 100% control on how much I want like to give to cross promo or not to give
exactly.
cross promo. And the question is if you want to control it by just manual control, and you say, okay, I don't want to spend more than 40% of my I don't want to give more than 40% of my inventory to cross promo, or you're saying that, okay, I will give, never mind if it's going to be 40, 70, 80%, if it generates the right eCPM, if the cross promo bidder that we are using, if the right giving the right eCPMs and competing for the impression, giving higher eCPMs than other networks. So I don't mind to give this impression for cross promo instead of other networks.
Yeah, I was kind of having a little bit of a leading question because you have a very different approach. So in terms of Supersonic, like you can be very transactional and very ROI driven with your approach, but then with Playtika, like you have your central team, but then you have other studios that have games with very extensive lifetimes and perhaps very high LTVs through those extensive lifetimes, whether we're talking about social casino, the jelly button casual puzzle type of games, or whether we're talking about story driven games like the Wooga. So kind of the question more towards Yuval is like, how much selling do you have to do and how much conversation you have to do? Because in order to set those expectations at the correct level and to kind of put Playtika first rather than the one of your powerful studios.
Yeah, I mean, so I will split it into two, right? We have the apps that their ad monetization approach is pretty wide. They show ads to users indifferently. And in this case, cross promotion should be treated like any other networks, exactly like Igor explained. I mean, it's generating revenue. If you are going to give that impression to a third-party advertiser, why not advertise your own apps? However, for apps, when it comes to a more restrictive and more conservative approach towards ad, you have to test very cautiously and monitor churn rate really closely, because that's where the highest potential of negative value effect on your a negative effect, on your value of the portfolio. So start from there and look at the churn rate. Don't freak out if the churn rate are like increasing, because what important is to look at the cumulative DAU days and then to measure the overall uplift. And we do that for a specific segment. We started with the ones that we felt more comfortable experimenting with. and then we just pushed it until we didn't see any more added value.
Got it. So in your approach, it's more thinking about ad monetization first. So just the ad monetization plugin, and through that, figuring out what type of audience you're showing the ads for and how aggressively and so forth. And then once the ad monetization plugin is set in, then you optimize the ad monetization by having a cross promotion element to it. And then through that, trying to optimize the LTV of not only that game, but also LTV of the portfolio. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, one of the insights that we found for the apps that ad monetization is showing there indifferently is that when you do add cross promotion into the waterfall, the competition over your traffic actually is increasing. So we've seen an increase in CPM and fill rates across all of the networks. So it's actually not only generating more revenue, and it's causing your entire value of from the ad revenue perspective to increase.
Interesting. Okay. Well, then that makes sense. Then there's not that much internal selling involved, since the component is already there and you're optimizing the component that already exists through ad monetization. Very clear. So let's get back to more tactical questions. What are your cross promotion setups look like, and what kind of tools are you using? So Igor, let's start with you.
Yeah. So I think that in general, you have few ways of using a cross promo in our. The first one is the native placement. Probably all the who plays hyper casual see the small window in the side for most of the games, which is the native placement. I think it's a nice thing and good thing to have, but it's good because you build it into your app. You don't need anyone for it. You have full control of the creatives or what you are showing there, etc. But on the other side, you don't have any data science behind it. A lot of logic, the low engagement, and the eventually limited optimization if you didn't build any infrastructure of data behind this native placement. So it can give you some uplift. Probably in most of the cases, you will see it as organic if you didn't do anything else. And then you need something else. Not only that, it's not enough. So the other one is that run through just mediation. Okay, you set some instance in your waterfall, right, with a certain CPM, and then basically you can utilize more ad spaces than just native, and it helps you to generate more traffic. But on the UI side, it's a little bit difficult because it requires arbitrage on CPMs bids and not CPIs. Then you need, again, you have kind of lack of optimization. You don't have dynamic suppressions for such cases. And it's a little bit difficult to do it from UA. Yeah. And the third solution is run through a network. Okay. There you basically it doesn't matter if you set a separate campaign for cross promo or just you bid on your apps, but you set CPI bids usually, which is easy. You can optimize. You have probably the data that you need to understand the ROAS goals and the output from the networks. On the other side, if it's not a dedicated solution, so you kind of compete with yourself, right? And you on your inventory, you don't know exactly what are the margins that is taken by the network, and it's not 100% transparent. Okay. In our case, we're using the iron source solution, of course, and we're using basically the bidder for cross prom, which is basically a separate bidder, kind of a network in our waterfall, a separate network in our waterfall, which allow us basically to bid and on each impression. Okay, this bidder fights for each impression that our game is showing. If the expected yield of the CPM is higher than the other networks, the cross promo will be shown. So it's very helpful for us. Of course, we are using all the user ad revenue data where we can, and we have the ARPDAU data, which is very helpful for us. And we basically know everything about the placement, where it's set, what the CPM it generates, what are exactly the margins and everything on the monetization side. On the UA side, we are using, of course, we are using dedicated campaigns, and we using the optimizer tool to maximize our cross promo. We do see that sometimes, like again, we have 32 games, so we have a lot of genres in hyper casual, and we sometimes we see that runners works great on runners, and sometimes runners doesn't work at all on runners on cross promo. But again, if the ECPM that the campaign generates is good, competitive enough, we are able to buy a lot on cross promo.
So one of the questions just appeared, and I'll just ask another from it is, what kind of formats besides video are you using? I think that's a good tactical questions. And is it only video, like in typical hyper casuals, or playable ads, and are there any other ones?
Yeah, for us it's mainly videos. Yeah, for native placement is dedicated for the placement, and it's a regular campaigns that we run on Iron Source, so it's playables and videos, interactives. Mainly, yeah, we barely see cross promo from banners.
Okay, that makes sense. So Yuval, Igor explained their setup very robust. Is it much different than what Playtika uses?
Not too much. We also started originally testing cross promotion with native. It was pretty limiting. It required a lot of in-house, coordination and getting, developers to develop the right placement, and then trying to be very flexible. So it's working, but it's not as flexible as we wanted it to be. So we started looking at our UA campaigns and realized that we get a lot of traffic from within our own apps. So that's when we found out where we should really do cross promotion using the RV placements that we have in our apps and get the full control over it. So we started using the Iron Source cross promotion solution, and since we started using it, we have full control over the demand side, how much we're paying, who we're targeting, the installs, the conversion, and we also have it in the supply side, and we can really limit it. So yeah, we're using the Iron Source solution for the RV placements. And also a really cool feature is the segmentation and A/B testing, which also something that was really hard to do for native placements, which really allows you the dynamic approach of testing that you need. And that's our main setup today.
So why is segmentation so important?
Okay, it's the $1,000,000 question. So as I mentioned, players' habit is usually consistent. Players don't usually behave too differently. So it's important that you fit the right treatment and the right recommendation per user. What they like, what they don't like, and to maintain, performance at its peak on both apps. What we do usually is we look at the entire data when segmenting. And when we tried running really broad, we realized that not every player should be, cross promoted into a specific app. We saw, for example, that the further the app categories are away from each other, the worse the performance. However, when the closer they are, the more cannibalization we see. So we try to not recommend usually our more valuable players the exact same app genre, but rather try to find similarities between the audiences and then match the different genres that correlate with the audience. So for example, looking at the players of Best Fiends, which is a puzzle game, and we've seen a lot of success with crossing them into Solitaire, which is a card, with Solitaire Grand Harvest, which is a cards game. So it's really important to fit it to the right segments.
Got it. And Yulia from the audience had more good questions that I'm actually asked you, Yuval. So what's the average percentage of impressions that you usually are giving to cross promotion? And secondly, do you use cross promotion tool also for retargeting?
Yeah, okay. So in terms of impressions, we don't try to limit it to a specific number. We have tried to keep it where we are limiting ads and where we're not showing it to everyone, to about 10% of our impressions. That's where also we will use cross promotion in the bottom part of the waterfall and not try to push it too hard. And for the second part of the question, which was, remind me, Mishka?
The retargeting.
Yeah, so we're not doing it today, but this is something that we're definitely looking into, just because it's impressions that you buy. It makes a lot of sense because it saves a lot of retargeting costs, but it's not something that we're doing on a broad scale right now.
Mm-hmm. Got it. So sorry for the messages. I'm unable to see the Q&A button for some reason in this format. So I'm sure from the Iron Source who's moderating this, they see the Q&A and they'll send me the list of those. So if you have any questions, actually, when you place them in the chat, it's much easier for me to read them because, well, it's the only way I can read them at the moment. So anyways, let's move on to talking about what Yuval was just talking about, and that is how to make the decision on when to promote to the same type of a game versus a different type of a game. And this is something that I've, in my own experience, this has always been a lot of discussion in purchase-driven studios is, cross promotion is like, we don't want to give our good players to the other team over there because we want to keep them and keep our revenue. So what is the sort of a approach when promoting to same type of games, a different type of games, and is the segmentation enough?
I mean, yes, the segmentation is enough. I mean, it's as long as you're more focused on the audience rather than you are on the like the game genres, because listen, at the end of the day, even though the games are from the same genre, they're different and they offer a different game experience to the user. So I wouldn't necessarily just stick to that. And, as I mentioned, we have seen a lot of success between game genres that are different from each other, not too different. We don't hold game genres that are too different in our portfolio. But there is, and then you look at the game genres that are exactly the same, and there's cannibalization, and that's based on the audience. So segmenting according to the audience and not according to the game genre is really key.
Mm-hmm. Got it. And so you said segmenting according to the audience and not through the game genre is the key. How do you build these audiences? Like what is the approach? Because on the highest level, there's the demographic information, and that's a very, very, very high level. What other tools can studios use to actually build these audiences?
Yeah, so I would look at the engagement with the game, right? I mean, we have, for example, one of our games had a hidden object, released a hidden object feature recently, which was for a limited time. And we do have a hidden object game in our portfolio. So we looked at the players who interacted with that feature the most and that had the most positive behavior towards it. And we knew what we should recommend to them. And that was not based on gender and demographic. It was based on the engagement with the app.
Interesting. Okay. And then when you talk about engagement with the app, do you use also any other type of user research tools? Like, I know a lot of different platforms are offering these player personas and then different type of, depending on the different tools, whether you go for Quantic Foundry of 12 traits or whatnot, do you use similar type of tools to categorize players into certain, with certain traits and certain types?
Yeah, we do. And we're actually doing it more and more, and we're deep diving more and trying to get more insights. The main reason we're doing that is because now when we're approaching segmentation, we want to do it based on AI predictions. And AI predictions is, building models, and it requires, a huge chunk of data that we didn't necessarily collected before. So using those services is really something that's going to help us do that.
Awesome. Igor, let's talk about, your segmentations and approach. Like, is it, I assume it's not quite on the same extensive level due to the much shorter lifetimes of players and, a very broader portfolio, but do you have the same type of approach of looking at different hyper casual genres and game types, or do you also look at the audiences? Like what is your approach there?
So we look on both. So we look on the genres and the audience, okay? Because again, there are in hyper casual because it's very broad. We never, like, in general, our strategy not to target a specific audience. Yeah, we're trying to target as broad as possible for most of our games, unless it's a very certain puzzle game, like for for example, sorted, where we see we need to target a specific audience. So in general, we're trying to target broad audience. When we come to cross promos, so we look eventually on the conversion between the apps. So sometimes, for example, we have two runners, which one is more for children audience, one is more for female audience. Yeah, so if we will try to cross promo between them, probably wouldn't work for us as the best in terms of conversion. But sometimes if it's same audience, same genre, it works very good. So we do see a good correlation between same audience, same hyper casual. It generates a lot higher IPM, usually a good source for in terms of ARPU LTV as well. So it's again, it's not as complicated as IPs and Playtika for hyper casual things. For us, it's pretty simple. If we see good conversion, same audience, same genres, and generate a good ECPM on the monetization side, so it works.
Are the is the player behavior and audience pretty much, is it similar across hyper casual games? You know, whether we're talking about runners or these feel good games or like these light puzzles, is it still quite similar type of audience that because the games are equally, you know, easy to play and to access, or is it very different?
So it's a good question. So it's you know, when you look on hyper casual games, a lot of games looks very similar to you, and you think that okay, it's probably most like I will buy like 20 games, most of them will generate the same output for me because it's the same audience. But I can surprise you, it's not like that. So we see totally different revenue and like in terms of ARPU from one app to other app. Not only on cross promo in general, so we can see a difference of 50 or 70% between the ARPU of one app to other app, which looks very similar in terms of audience, because it depends on the game itself, on the placement of the ad in the game, and there are a lot of monetization aspects that usually you need to take in mind, although the games looks the same. So. The question, the answer is no, not the same.
Got it. One more question is about segmentation. Is like, let's say I'm in a studio and I do have monetization set up and I am doing some cross promotion. Like, what is the first segmentation advice you could give to a studio to start off with? Like what's the first step? So Yuval, please.
Yeah. How we approached it is, you know your sensitive segment, right? You know your most valuable segment, and you know the segment you're less willing to experiment on. So for us, it's usually, the users who are willing to purchase and to progress in the game and that have a lot of like a really high lifetime value, and also the new users that we just onboarded, because we don't want to interrupt with their first time user experience in the app too much, and we do want them to experience it fully while progressing. So those would be the most like risky segments for us that we would avoid starting with cross promoting. And we will look on the seniority of the users in the game and try to recognize when users usually churn, and just try to recommend them something new, something different to refresh their experience with the Playtika portfolio just before they do churn. So I think you can just look at the data in your game and find those segments and how are they making sense for you.
Got it. So first thing, segment players based on churn, and then start experimenting with those who are more likely to churn soon.
Exactly.
Igor, how about you? How about Supersonic? Same approach?
No. So this is, I think, the biggest difference between IP and the ad revenue games, where in ad revenue games, you basically choose when you want to start to cross promo or to in general to add the ad monetization, right? Because you're afraid of that the user will or harm your it will be harmed like by the quality of the user. They don't want to see ad, or he will leave you for another game. So for hyper casual, obviously you probably see your first ad after the first 30 seconds. So there is no segmentation, and we don't like afraid in terms of charm because of ads. Obviously, in optimal world. So you want to show the cross promo of your ad exactly at the point that the user is going to charm your game, but it's impossible in hyper. So mostly we show the cross promo from the first minute of the game. And we understand, as I said in the beginning, we understand that probably most of our users play more than one game. I hope that more than one game of Supersonic. So
Got it.
this is our approach.
Yeah, very very different. So listen, then let's then talk about how do you decide between cross promotion and ad monetization. So is it on a high level you just look at the value, the value of the portfolio, and through that make the decision, or is it some kind of a different approach? Are there strategic factors where you have to, or not have to, where you choose to protect your DAU rather than go for the monetization, which I've seen many studios do? So Yuval, can you explain how do you decide between cross promotion and ad monetization?
Yeah, it all comes down to a question of if you count cross promotion as ad revenue generator. If you do, then again, cross promotion is an ad network. You should treat it like an ad network. When you're bidding on the demand side, you should make sure you're not inflating your bids and to maintain the right proportion. But that's when you count it as an ad revenue. If you don't, and you treat it like as in if it's money going from one pocket to the other, there is a very restrictive approach that we're taking, and that is usually using cross promotion if it's in the waterfall, then as a backfill or the lowest positions, and we're usually not again going too much to the top of the waterfall. Because ad revenue is still the revenue, and cross promotion is cross promotion. It has different purposes, again, because you're not counting it as an ad revenue. So it all comes down to how do you count that ad revenue that cross promotion is generating, and that obviously refers mostly to doing cross promotion through ad placements instead of native.
How do you calculate cross promotion as ad revenue? Like how does that, is it straightforward? Or
yeah, pretty much. I mean, if you're using the Iron Source solution, you can see it in the waterfall, because Iron Source allows you to separate the cross promotion network from its own network, and then you can really look at it as a separate network and count the CPM and count the revenue and the fill rate and the impression. So everything, and it's your own inventory for sure. So that's pretty easy to see and monitor.
Got it. And then through that, it's easy to manage. Yeah.
Actually, casual, if like you use the bidder for cross promo as separate network, actually can boost your LTV and the ARPDAU that you generate from ads, because if you have a good conversion in the cross promo, you produce a high CPMs on the monetization side, so you generate the benefit from monetization as well.
Okay, all right. Well, that makes sense. And you all, like in your type of portfolio, I'm sure this doesn't apply to Igor, but in your portfolio, do you ban any of the publishers from your waterfall, or from not from the waterfall? Waterfall is for the networks, but do you ban them from giving them your players?
So you mean external publishers, not our own?
Exactly, like rival publishers in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, we do that. Again, it depends on the segments. Some segments we're more open to, and the ad revenue is overtaking the importance of not showing competitors' ads. But again, if it's a segment that you're less comfortable sharing with, we either don't open ads to it at all, and if we do open ads, we try to limit the competition and maybe not show the exact same genres, just because of the point where there's cannibalization when it's the same category. So it's easier to show other game genres rather than the exact same one. So we do that, but it changes based on the segment.
Igor, is that the same thing? Do you show competitors' ads freely, because it's in the end it's ad monetization?
Yeah, so we do. We show competitor ads. I think this is essentially the ecosystem that we live in. And it's very difficult to actually to block some public or something, because you use so many UA channels. Then you need to go from channel to channel to block. So it doesn't, like in most of the cases, doesn't make sense, right? So it can harm your LTV in most of the cases, and you wouldn't benefit too much on the other side.
Yeah, but I think back in like 2012 or 13, I was playing that game of whack-a-mole. Bad thing, but that was before hypercasual was anything. So I just had to ask that question if that still is the game that people play. Let's talk about aggression level. So at Supersonic, probably the aggression level to show the ads, as you mentioned, is like the moment you start playing, pretty much the first fail or first 30 seconds, you're being seeing an ad. But there's other elements to it. Like how do you set up an aggression level in already a very aggressive ad monetization
Yeah, so
game?
it's more about ad monetization, less cross promo in general. But
Yeah.
yeah, so we have our own SDKs in all our games, and we do a lot of A/B testing. So we do we do A/B test on placements of ads in the games and see which placement works better, frequency in terms of ads, out of interstitial. So all of that we're doing based on data. We are not guessing at all. We're doing A/B testing. We're choosing the best options based on data, and then we place it for all the users. It helps us to maximize our LTV in general and our ARPU. And I think that now, especially now with all the changes, so every uplift of your ARPU that you're able to do based on the placement and the frequency, etc. That all the changes that you can play with ad monetization is super crucial for you.
Mm-hmm.
It's not only like the waterfall today. The optimization, the waterfall is nice, it's important. You need to do it. It's much easier today with networks that are bidders, so you don't need to waste so much manual work as we used to do 1 year or 2 years ago. But it's not enough in today's world. You must to understand that you need to play with more factor in your ad monetization to maximize it.
Mm. And Yuval, in your case, I assume again, aggression level is based on very detailed segmentation and constant testing.
Yeah, I mean, again, there is no right answer. You'll have
Yeah.
to just test and again start with the segment you're more comfortable experimenting with, and just push it until you don't see any more added value, and that should be your benchmark.
All right. I have one last question before I move into a lot of questions that came in from the audience. So my question is of course regarding privacy changes, which as public companies you can't really talk about, but I want to ask about IDFV, and it's something that is seen in the media, or some companies have even publicly spoken about it being a sort of a salvation for large publishers, and through that and the M&A that they're doing leads to building of content fortresses where they have similar type of genres together and they are driving cross promotion using IDFV. Is this truly, in your opinion, a winning strategy for 2022? And is IDFV truly enough? So, Yuval, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, IDFV is good, but it has two main shortages. One is that you have to have one of the developers' app already installed. So that's where cross promotion advantages is pretty clear. But the other shortage is that the vendor part is usually determined by the data provided to the App Store. And in a world of M&A, there's really, it's tricky because there's really not much of a rush to go and change the developer name of a beloved app or brand. So that's something that's important to note.
Mm-hmm. And through that, you mean is when you go to an app store and you see who's the developer of the game, it has to be the same across the whole portfolio for the IDFV to work. In order to get that to happen, you have to do a lot of groundwork with Apple and with legal and so forth and so forth. And
Mhm.
not all the publishers have done it. Okay. So Igor, what's your take on IDFV?
Yeah, so I think it's definitely important approach for 2021, and I think for 2022 as well. Of course, the IDFP will help us to understand better our users and better to analyze the data in the world that we don't have IDFA at all. For large publishers with a big portfolio of games, so it's super helpful. You can be much more utilized and can be much more optimized based on to rely on IDFA, of course, and when you lose the IDFA. So this is definitely something that you should look into it for 2020.
And I assume that, well, both of your apps are, of course, on Android as well. And Android allows you to see at least a little bit more data that you can then um, take back to your Apple version and then kind of use that information there. So, okay, well, let's move on to the user question. I've been asking too many of my own. So let's start off with this one. So do you offer any incentives to users who cross promote in the original app or target app? So to my understanding, this question is there an incentive? Uh, is there an incentive offered for players who cross promote to your other games rather than those who watch just ads? Are they treated somehow differently?
So for us, they're not treated differently in the way that we incentivize them to install, but rather use rewards in post install, and because we know the user and we know that they came from another app, so we just welcome them and give them a bigger bonus than than we usually give, or like a nice coupon. So it's not really incentivized to just incentivize them to install just for the sake of installing. It's to increase the and maximize their experience in the app that they're crossing to.
Got it. Igor?
We don't do strategy.
Yeah. So let's just like quickly fire these questions. Like you both don't have to answer the same ones, and just first come, first served. And I can actually answer even some of them like this. Is cross promo down via traditional ad network, iron source ad mob? Well, as we've had in this discussion, you both use the iron source cross promotion tools, and that is the way to do your cross promotion. Actually see the I lost the words, but you were able to see the ad revenue basically of your own cross promotion through that, put them in the right order. So suggest trying that one. Are there any churn prediction services you could recommend, or are those done in-house? That's a question as well.
Yeah, they're done in-house. We are just the way we manage our data with general segments. That would be also that. And again, our AI segments are predicting churn rates as well. So it's easy to see.
All right. So what would be an acceptable cross promotion rate per install in a genre such as casual puzzle title?
What would be the what? Sorry.
So this acceptable cross promotion. So I assume that as ads are being shown, like what is the percentage of those cross promoting successfully to your other from your other puzzle game to your other puzzle game? So from a very favorable title to another favorable title, or from one hyper casual game to another hyper casual. That's probably 100%. But, but so Yuval, do you have a number to kind of give
hard.
a ratio?
It's hard to say it as a ratio and a number. However, I will say this. The quality that you see of success when your users do cross is really similar to organic installs. It's pretty high, retention's looking great, and again, as I said, users have it as consistent. So if you have a lot of users who are usually paying users, you'll see that again in the new app. But it's all about how quickly your users are churning the original app because of it, and that's when you'll just try to limit it. But the success is definitely there.
Yeah, I assume with the Supersonic.
Yeah, so we don't have such numbers, but it's quite high. So it's again, and very depends on it mainly depends on the audience.
Yeah, I mean, hyper casual game, you show ads until they start playing another hyper casual game. Is that that would be pretty much,
and
so,
they can
so
play,
it's 100%.
Yeah, and they can play 5 hyper casual at one time.
Yeah, it's actually more than 100%. It's hopefully 500%. Here's the question: how do you decide the price you're willing to pay for cross player? I mean, this is again, I think this goes back to using a specific tool. So in this case, you both are using the iron source cross platform tools, and then the price is decided in that tool. So you don't have to regulate the price. It's a free market, and through that, as long as you have ad monetization, it works there. So I think I'm able to answer that. And there was also, how do you decide which user to cross promote? And I think you've all mentioned this multiple times. It's segmentation, and you start off with the players who are most likely to churn. So do first your churn analysis, and then start optimizing with that segment of those who are about to churn. What is your opinion on cross promotion for churned users, targeting churned users with another game in your portfolio? I think both of you kind of, well, in case of Supersonic, it's show ads until they play all the games, and then with the with Yuval with Playtika, it's again it's when they're about to churn, you start optimization, and different game is every game is
Yeah.
treated as individual, correct?
Correct, but I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, it's not that we're not trying to save the about to churn users within our own apps, like the original app. It's not like we're just giving them up, but we are just defining those who are less risky for us, and those who maybe even would stick to the game no matter what they're going to play else. So that's also there. It's both of them.
Matt Tatarinov said, what is your thoughts on the approach for cross promotion when the big publisher focuses all paid UA resources on one app? If I understand this correctly, there is a one winning title where all the effort are being put in and that is being grown, but you still have a portfolio. I'm not sure if I understand the question there. Do you guys understand that question?
I mean, I'll try to say it from our perspective. We don't prefer just one app. There's not our biggest app is getting the traffic from all of the other little apps that are like maybe performing less well, generating less value. We try to be very fair. The studios are still, each studio is still individual, and still each studio is still trying to maximize the efforts of performance and providing the best user experience to their own players. So we would try to always monitor and make it fair so that the games who do give away users into the portfolio and like donate the users into the portfolio are also receiving them back. And there's no really one preference to one app.
And we stand like we target all our apps at the same way. We have a dedicated, like we have campaigns that target all our apps. We set eCPIs according to the ARPU we see, and because we are using the network, eventually it's the conversion that fixed here. We don't like prioritize here.
Other questions, do you ever cross promote new titles to your current users or churn users with custom audience list? I think that's a yes. I mean, if game is launched globally, the KPIs are sufficient to drive UA, and part of the DNU is also cross promotion, so I can answer that one. This is for Yuval. Do you also cross promote bases? Do you also cross promote bases the face of the player in the game? For example, limit the new players, but do a lot of cross promotion to players who have been in the system for a while and now are likely to churn?
I mean, I think we've answered that.
Yeah, I think we've answered multiple times. So always back to segmentation, churn analysis, and then optimization. Igor, how many hyper casual games you need to test in publishing to find a super hit?
We don't have numbers, so it's
depends who's searching for the super hit, right?
It depends. It depends on the studio. It depends on the developer. It depends on many, like it's not sometimes like it can be 1 to 10, 1 to 20, 1 to 100.
It's the same thing as like how many times you need to roll a dice to hit a 7. It's like, well,
yeah, I think I hope that it's more than that, but
that's actually that's true. That would be pure luck, but that's true. So no, that's a bad analogy. Don't use that one. Yeah, of course, with game development, it depends who
depends on
develops
the studios and the game developers and the professional level developer.
It's like Supercell ships $1 billion game every third year, and they don't ship other else. So
we are trying to publish 6 games in a quarter, so 6 to 8 games in a quarter. So.
Got it. So do you use revenue prediction for cross promotion to compare with ad revenue? Interesting question.
Do we use cross promotion to compare with ad revenue?
No. Do you use revenue prediction for cross promotion to compare with ad revenue?
Yeah, but we do that for our entire UA. So again, the revenue that you'll see from cross promotion for us, because it's we count the ad revenue from cross promotion differently. As I said, it's not that obvious to us that cross promotion revenue is generating revenue. But what you do want to see is that when you're looking at the overall influence, and I saw one of those questions, if we continue to monitor the users in the original app, so I think I'm going to cover both of them in the same answer. We understand what are we losing and what are we going to continue losing when users are churning and users are losing, or sorry, we're losing active days in one app. And we try to understand what is the compensation that we see from the new app. So we do understand what is the lifetime value, and we use our AI prediction for lifetime value from the UA side, from the domain side as a new install. But we also try to understand what are we going to potentially lose if we will continue doing that. So every DAO that we're losing is a potential loss of a new first-time depositor. So we're trying to always monitor it and look at the overall picture.
Got it. And I assume also that, well, there's a question that do you monitor the players that you cross promote in the next game? And of course you do, because that's part of the whole UA package. And through that, you're able to get the portfolio value of the players. So I think we answered all the questions. There were one directed to me, but this panel is not about me or my studio, so I'm not going to answer it. But thank you for the question. And thank you everybody for joining. And most importantly, thank you for amazing guests, and thank you for Iron Source for hosting this one. So just thank you overall to everybody. I hope this was insightful, and yeah, everybody have a good day, good night, good morning, wherever you are. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.